15.
Going live in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the Art Eye Days. Wherever you are, I hope you are well. And a special welcome to this session dedicated to co-creation, to co-creating a modern European knowledge valorization policy. Climate change is showing us that research and innovation no longer has the luxury of time. And the COVID-19 crisis has made it very clear to all of us how essential it is to bring the results of research and innovation immediately to society around the globe. And when we reorganized here in the EU Commission, the Research and Innovation Department last year around sustainability, we created a Directorate for People, for Planet, for Prosperity. We created also a new team on knowledge valorization policies. At the time, we knew that there is a gap, but we didn't know how urgent it is. And today's session is exactly dedicated to that. We want to discuss what it takes to create a modern and up-to-date knowledge valorization policy, looking into knowledge transfer, IPR, skills, etc. And your input today will feed into the update of our Commission recommendation, which dates already from 2008, an update which will be part of the Revitalizing European Research Area communication the Commission will hopefully adopt already next Wednesday, with conclusions under the German presidency. So in this session, this is how we will proceed. We will have 3 presentations from 3 stars of knowledge valorization. And I will welcome them especially and introduce them to you in a moment. After that, on that basis, we will open a discussion. And to have this discussion with you, please use the Q&A tab you find on top right of your screen. Type your questions there, and you can also vote questions. If you find a question particularly interesting, vote for it. And on that basis, we can interact here with our knowledge valorization stars. And to test the system, I would like to start with a poll. So please go to the poll function. We've asked you, this is about finding out the affiliation of our audience of you here who is there. Don't worry, it's not, it's privatized. So start just clicking on the, so we start polling now. Oh, it's already closed? Okay, it's going on. Yes, please. So let's use a system. Thanks for your participation. Good, that gives us a good overview. And we have a very good mix from research. Yeah, we could have more from industry, actually. General interest. We have some from civil society, so your voice is particularly important. So even if we currently only have 3%, make your voice heard. We want it to be heard. And yeah, okay. So with that, I think we can close the poll and go directly to the presentation. And I start with Justina Sigotura. She's the Vice President of the Poznan Science and Technology Park. And as an economist specialized in business analysis and tech transfer with experience in the US and the EU, it's no wonder that the Poznan Science and Technology Park is flourishing. Actually, it's the first of its kind in Poland, celebrates its 25th anniversary this year, and hosts 80 companies, 60 labs, and an own very advanced data center. So first class thing. Justina, floor is yours about knowledge valorization. We are eager to hear your insights.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and introduction of my person and Poznań Science Technology Park. Hello, everyone. Yes, we are the Science and Technology Park, also the owner of intellectual property. So the valorization policy is in special needs and interest for us. The topic of the session today is actually explaining all the details that need to be discussed sooner than later, just like Peter said. Co-creating, which is the co-creation, it's not a creator and the receiver anymore. It's more players on the scene of modern European knowledge and valorization policy. So all these three magic words, co-creating, modern, and valorization, give us the feedback of what we will be talking about today. And what I would like to present is how do we see us in 10 years? What is the modern policy
The WhatsApp talking.
So unfortunately, it seems that we lost Justina. Am I the only one who lost her, or is it also okay? So we still see her presentation, but we don't hear her anymore. There it's loading again. Justina, we lost you. Can you hear us now? Now you're muted. Please open your mic. The moment I lost you was when you were saying where we want to be in 10 years from now.
Okay, so can you hear me now correctly now, but without problems? All right. So future technologies, Industry 4.0. What I was making point of was 10 years from now, we are not gonna be in the same world anymore of inventions, patents, and human ideas. 10 years from now, we have to think about Industry 4.0, that machines will be the invention givers, that machines will probably create some intellectual property. And that's the biggest challenge for us to understand and prepare for that new era. 10 years from now, we will also be in the world of increased mobility and co-creation. So that title of this session is perfectly matching what we will be discussing today. It won't be a one giver, one provider of invention anymore. It will be based on much higher and complex relations and stakeholders and standards and needs. The industry will be pooling inventions from academia, and academia probably has to be open to user experience to take into consideration civilians and their needs, because we are more precise on our needs, our standards of living, and the quality of living. 10 years from now, we will also think of data management, not only knowledge as human knowledge, not only the inventions, but also data management. And it won't be a transfer anymore. It won't be one direction, a transaction anymore. The flows will be much higher, much more complex, and well managed. So the most important for us 10 years from now is how to deal with all that many players, funders, creators, beneficiaries, facilitators, and finally, users. Also, the challenge for us to discuss is the equal distribution of effects of the inventions of the intellectual property that will be created. the world 10 years from now will be in much more difficult situation. There will be much bigger disturbances. There will be much more discrepancies between the poor and the rich. So the challenge for us is to how to manage equal distribution of what we create. Therefore, we have to think about openness in the whole management and the whole IP valorization. By openness, I mean the education and science needs to be open and ready for mobility and multidisciplinary approach. So again, there will be a co-creation rather than creation, and there will be a lot of players on the scene. So how do we want to achieve it? Is we have to understand our current needs. And our current needs are about understanding the valorization as a broad impact on economy, on human life, and on human being. It's not only a monetarization of patents and invention anymore. It's not only something that is countable, something that is measurable. We have to take into consideration the user's experience, design thinking, because the market is more demanding. We have to make steps to provide the best solutions. And those solutions sometimes will not give us concrete numbers as patents implemented. It will give us a better quality of life.
It seems that we have lost Justina again, or am I the only one? No. So I propose the following, because we heard her strong plea, putting us in 10 years from now, her plea for openness, for new forms of engaging, for design thinking, for co-creation, knowledge management. So I propose that we come back to her last point later in the discussion and move now to Davide Iannuzzi. Davide, I hope you don't mind. When I read your CV, I was reminded of Peace Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. When he addressed banks to help the poor, he realized that the system didn't work. And when you, a professor in experimental physics, came up with an invention and realized it would not go to the market, you did it all yourself with all the knowledge transfer activities, and that led you to create an own institute, a demonstrator lab at the Vrije University of Amsterdam, and I would welcome you now on floor, asking Justina for a bit of patience, Justina, because we lost you, and I really liked your power play, putting us in 10 years from now, that we would look much broader than patents. But I suggested we come back to your last point at the end of the presentation so that you can close in. Davide, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you also for the introduction. I would like to give you a little bit an overview of what knowledge transfer may mean from a researcher perspective. So we'll take really the perspective of a researcher, young or old, but still an academic researcher. And to start with that, I would like to go back a couple of years ago. I had the opportunities to give a talk in front of roughly 1,000 physicists. And the talk was about academic entrepreneurship. And during that talk, I asked those physicists, I said, look, guys, you are all in front of extremely interesting new inventions, high technologies that could have an impact on the market. So the question was, why have you never started your company? And I don't go into the details of the result of that poll, but what is important to stress is that if you now look at the three main pillars that would push a person as an academic researcher to start a company, meaning motivation, opportunity to recognition, or the willingness to take action, they basically split the pie in three parts, equal parts. And I think this applies to most of, not all, but most the knowledge transfer activities that researchers may be involved in. So when we look at policies that may change the perspective that scientists have on knowledge transfer, we have to work on all three elements. Again, motivation, opportunity recognition, and willingness to take action. And of course, if you look at from a helicopter view, what you need to create are incentives in terms of rewards and career perspective if you want to motivate scientists to basically go beyond what their normal teaching and research activities are. You need also to give them time and tools to learn, to recognize the opportunities that they may have in front of them, but they cannot see. And eventually, you have to give them the resources, including, again, time, and offers that they cannot refuse to, is it all working okay? Yeah. Offers that they cannot refuse to basically take action. Okay. If you look at the 2008 documents, of course, there are a lot of hints into this direction, but there are two things that I would like to stress that, in my opinion, are missing and we should take care of. The first one is the metrics. And I understand when Justina says not only about patent, and that's correct, but if you want indeed to give rewards to scientists and career perspective, you have to be able to somehow measure what it means to be successful in a valorization activity. The other extremely more difficult thing is to understand where to cut, because researchers are already stretching their working hours. They're already fully dedicated to research and teaching. If you want them also to embrace the knowledge transfer mission, you have to tell them what they can cut on. And the same goes for funding. I mean, we cannot hide under a finger or whatever. We cannot simply say, well, we just add this on top of what we're doing. And indeed, strategy is about what not to do a lot of times rather than to do. When it comes to think about the 10-year long roadmap, I mean, I wish I knew what would be ideal to have in 10 years' time. I just want to give my 2 cents and propose one element that we could consider. And I think that every research institute should be equipped with a hands-on, risk-free, failure-friendly knowledge transfer laboratory. Something that is as essential as a library, just to mention, and something that could fill the gap between the knowledge transfer offices and the researchers. We should encourage our researchers to use it, and we should design financial incentives and career rewards for those who use it correctly. We did this in Amsterdam with my demonstrator lab, and I think there are similar initiatives all around the world. And every time they have been implemented, you do see an increase in the results of valorization. What is important to stress is this has to be considered as a cost unit, not a profit unit. Valorization within the university a lot of time costs money, doesn't generate money, and we should actually accept that, because what the university generates are then new services and products for the population, new jobs, and they make the economy, let's say, keep rolling. Last, about IP broadly defined, we're asked to comment on what we think about IP. Thanks for the comment. I can come back on that if you wish. What it is important, in my opinion, is to recognize that universities do things that others don't dare to do, and that is the strongest IP position that we have. That was my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, David. A direct question. You made this important point that when we ask research, or when researchers should become also entrepreneurs, they need to cut on something. On what did you cut? Which activities did you cut down? None.
Well, eventually, myself, I did cut on research recently, but I did it until recently. But what you do, you have to strike a balance, and did consider that technology transfer and knowledge transfer in general is part of our portfolio. And maybe yes, we have to cut on a little bit on both research and education, or maybe make it more efficient, especially in communicating outside.
Understood. Thanks a lot. Let me introduce you to Dietrich Neller. Dietrich is, without exaggeration, one of the most important people in the German Ministry of Research. because he's in charge of strategy and policies. And he has been instrumental in launching in Germany, the Council for Digital Infrastructure, very important in the current setting and environment for the digital transformation. I had the privilege to work with Dietrich on European matters, and I can give him the biggest compliment I have, and that is he is a true European. So Dietrich, over to you.
Thank you very much. In the first place, I would like to send the flowers back to Brussels. I'm also really amazed about the work which is done from Brussels, which is very important also for our work on the national side. But a warm hello from Berlin to all and everyone on a nice, bright, beautiful day. If you allow, I would like to start out just to say 2 sentences why I do feel that the RI days and especially our small event are so important. In Germany, I have the feeling, and when I talk to friends from other European countries, I get the impression that we are all very busy in coping and struggling with the current COVID situation. But I'm also very much convinced that if we look only at the financial side, the enormous funds we have to spend for struggling with COVID, one way or the other, we will have to pay them back. They won't come for free. And in order to do that, we must now prepare to create the wealth which can pay back that later. For me, it's like a hike in the mountain. We see a big mountain in front of us with a steep slope, but we also already know, and that's 10 years from Justina, when we have reached the mountain pass, we will see a very long valley, and at the end of the valley comes the next mountain pass we have also to cross. And so I think we need to prepare our baggage not for the journey just up to the next mountain path, but for the next 10 years. And that I would like to see as a small result of our exchange today, that we get a better idea what do we have to pack in our backpack. So next slide, please. I have 2 small slides about our current situation in Germany, but I won't need to dwell very long on this because Justina and Davide, you have made from your perspectives already some of the main points. Even though you might not be able to read all the text on this slide, I still like it because if you manage to read, you can see the good old technology transfer, the technology base at the center of everything. But on this picture, it's put into context. So on the right-hand side, you have open innovation, which includes everything Justina just rightly explained to us. Below the technology side, you have the competencies, the skills we need, which are growing more and more important. And Davide talked a lot about that. And then, of course, on the left-hand side, we are not in a self-contained system, but there are urgent pressures which just force us to move quicker forward than we used to in the past. Next slide, please. Since we just had the occasion to watch the handover of the missions on European level, I have just 1 slide on our German perception of missions, which is a bit less ambitious than that on European level in the respect regarding our ambition to achieve immediate direct results, but it's more on a systemic approach with 2 directions. The first one we know that we have in Germany, and I'm afraid we are not the only country. We need to work on cooperation across the borders of ministries. It's not a competition. If you're in a government, it's not about competition of ministries. Of course, politics always has competition, but there are a lot of win-win situations where we have to cooperate together in order to make coherent politics. And the other one is also, even if we are supported by the majority in parliament, co-creation does not only include our colleagues in the ministry, but it includes co-creation with society. So only this to this slide, then next slide, please. I'm trying to address a bit the questions which were put forward to us. And I can group the points you see here on the slide basically in three pillars. The first one is the subject of culture. So once again, it's open science, open innovation. Davide, you talked about monetary and non-monetary incentives, and also reputation in the field of science is very important. And I read the comment from Anonymous, stop putting researchers into enterprise. My personal view is much more differentiated. You cannot force everyone, every single person along the same lines, but we need to expand even our culture from more researchers thinking also about putting their knowledge into a very practical use, like in startup companies. It's not the route for everyone to go, but I think we have a large potential to increase that route. In culture, therefore, I think it's also important that we have on level of society appreciation for entrepreneurship. The second pillar would be structural issues like resilience and also sustainable development goals. What we need to do must not only work for the immediate future, but for Justina's next 10 years or hopefully even longer. We need more agility, more capability to adapt things which are true today, but which may not be true anymore tomorrow. We need to build, even despite of all those changes, more mutual trust between actors in society as a whole. And also we need to improve our legal framework and also to work on our mindset in the society. This also includes not only technical innovation, but also social innovation. And again, the point about participation, I already had made. And so I come to my last slide. If you give me a couple of more minutes. So digitalization data, I think that again, Justina and Davide already made the point. Competencies, skills, capabilities, lifelong learning, flexible career path are all things I would like to be taken up in the next recommendation on IP management, code of practice, transfer of knowledge, social innovation. And Peter, I remember it's quite some time we have been discussing this issue, and I think it hasn't lost importance since. Participation, citizen science, dialogue with society. It's not about only sending messages in one way, in either direction, but we need to come into a system that we have reciprocal communication, so that messages are being sent from both ends and also messages are being taken up from both ends. And in order to put things into practice and to realize what I just described as an ambition, We also need more living labs where we can try out things, experiment with new things which had not been in the mindset before, which are not already included in regulations, where we can have that dialogue with the people concerned. We need adaptive regulation. We need regulation which is open for the changes and still is able to give the necessary orientation also for people acting. And to this end, we need to think always to put proper clauses in regulations of all sorts to be able to do it also in a legal and in a very precise and effective manner. So those are points on my last slides, which I would very much love to see to make it also into the next recommendation. So far from my side, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dietrich. And I see a lot of common points of all three of you: openness, agility, the failure-friendly lab mentioned by Davide, but also by you and Justina. And we are getting in questions. Thanks a lot for that. Before we open the discussion, Justina, you were cut, unfortunately. Can you wrap up your presentation in 1 minute so that you have the... But you need to open your mic, please.
Sure, let me try. And for security of our connection, I will turn off my video for now, if you don't mind. So it will be better to just hear me and to wrap up my thoughts. Yes, so the openness, the multi player scene of the knowledge is driving us to certain points. First of all, how to foster the research valorization culture, because it will be our future now. So we have to respect each other, because there's a lot of players, there is a lot of connections, as I said before. So we have to really pay respect to each other, keeping in mind that the machines will be also part of the deal in the valorization policy. Then we also have to promote incentives, just like both gentlemen before me said, that we have to incentivize those players to work with each other, and by maybe sending doctors and researchers and scientists to industry, then pulling invention ideas and IP from academia by executive doctorates, just like we do in Poznań Science and Technology Park. The academia must be ready for a co-creation process, just like in Oxford University. They send scientists to company for 1 day in a week, just work for free, but exchange ideas. That's brilliant. Or living labs, just like Dietrich mentioned. We have one in Krakow. So these are the things that will bring us closer to the perfect valorization of what we invent. Then I'm for promoting and stimulating grants and mixed funding for co-creation, just like we do now in Horizon Europe and in Digital Europe, so that incentivize those players to work together. My also postulate is to give more freedom to universities to manage their inventions and knowledge freely. But what I mean by this is, don't punish them if they have to license out for $0, pounds, whatever the monetary unit is. They license out, but there's a big impact of quality of life and human beings. Then, of course, educated valorization. What is this? That it's not only patents, it's not only measurable countables, but it's also, just like I said, a broad spectrum of impact. And final is understand intellectual property as an investment. We have to treat it with utmost care and caution and calculate broad impact of what we create. So that's maybe summary from me.
Thank you very much, Justina. We heard you loud and clear. You were speaking about respect, Dietrich about trust. The question is how to become trustworthy and make yourself respected. And I think that is a challenge for our work here together, because I quite like Davide's title, Behavior Follows Structure. So we need to put the right structure in place to go for this, as Dietrich mentioned, the long valleys, mountaintops, because it's a long-term endeavor for sure. So let's go. Can we put up the second poll, please, which is about the pillars for knowledge valorization. We are now more than 100 participants, 1/3 from policy, 1/3 from research, 12% from civil society, NGOs, and the rest is general interest. So we miss industry. We will reach out with the results of today, of course, also to industry to be fully inclusive. So please vote on the two most important channels in your view. Okay, and I'll come up. Unfortunately, we have a difficulty in showing the results to all, but as soon as we have them, I will share them with you. So let's go to the questions. And please don't forget to vote if you think something is particularly important. Let's start with you, David. The question is on the extent to which researchers should be incentivized to commercialize their results.
It strongly depends on the strategy of the institute that the researcher belongs to. I can tell you my direct experience with my university. We have a very aggressive strategy, and because we want really to change the culture. So in this moment, we keep the full throttle, if you wish, and we incentivize really a lot of researchers to do it. And this means giving them the facilities, the tools, and the recognition they deserve for their commercialization path. This can be entrepreneurship or collaboration with industry. By the way, just commenting very quickly on one of the chat, I didn't say that you should do only entrepreneurship. It's just that I have experience in entrepreneurship and I can tell about that very clearly. But of course, as Dietrich said, I agree 100%. You should have a portfolio of knowledge transfer, which includes also entrepreneurship. Just quickly, for your numbers, in the physics department, in 2 years, we spun up 3 companies. They're generating more than 50 million euros and giving jobs to more than 160 people. It's not too bad. So you shouldn't forget that. But going back to the question, again, it strongly depends on how the research institute you belong to wants to push it. We are not the United States, where this is quite common. So if we want to accelerate it now, of course, we have to give more tools now, thinking that maybe later we can actually draw back a little bit. But if you want to change the culture, you really have to think in terms of investing time and resources significantly. That cannot be just, and do also this, by the way. Meaning that and not everyone should do it, and not everyone in the same way. But there are plenty of ways of doing knowledge transfer. But it is part of our, by the way, by law, is one of the 3 things, at least in the Netherlands, that one has to do in his or her position at the university.
Thank you, Davide. We have this outcome now of the poll, and you can find that if you go on the poll tab and click closed. So the winning channel is funding of knowledge valorization activities, which resonates also with the point some of you made, that it should not be a cost unit, but not a profit unit, but a cost unit. The second, close up to with 32%, is incentivizing and connecting valorization actors. Smart management and protection of IP is number 3, with a bit of difference, 20%, and 12% is citizen engagement. I think that's a very telling, very clear outcome. So on that basis, let's go to the highest ranked question, which is currently, in your experience, which is more effective? Researchers engaging in knowledge transfer activities or a dedicated knowledge transfer officer? Justina, can you enlighten us what is, in your experience, of what is more effective?
Can I drop in with my idea and my experience?
Yes, please.
Yes. So,
yes, please.
So from my experience, many years spent on working with researchers, helping them commercialize their inventions. I never ever pushed my inventor or the researcher to do the economic analysis of what he or she has invented. So in my opinion, professional licensing officer, professional commercial agent, or whoever who has knowledge of on the market and a little bit of science, understanding the science of what the researcher is saying, is much better option. Because first of all, if we organize those people in certain units like technology transfer units, we can afford databases, we can afford patent databases, market databases, where we can really do the economic analysis of the potential implementation of the invention. Researcher has to give us the scientific feedback, the scientific knowledge, and the scientific thought. We have to think about the application together with the scientists. We have to work out the application of what the invention is, and then try to figure out what the markets are. Just like I said in my previous slides, this is an investment. We have to consider some kind of the valorization of knowledge as an investment, and not only that investment that will bring money back, the investment that will bring a lot of impact back. So in my opinion, it's much better to focus the resources and cost in a special unit that will help researchers analyze the economic impact and economic chances of implementation, rather than pushing them towards commercialization.
Yeah.
They have to stay focused in their labs and inventing more and more.
Thank you, Justine. We have quite a lot of questions, so we need to be telegraphic. We can go a bit longer now than 2:45, but maximum 10 minutes from now. So let's be telegraphic to the extent. There is a very interesting question here about how to measure discoveries which are not of commercial interest. So, for instance, the toxicity of a substance. And I can only say from a policy perspective, this is what we need, the evidence base for policy making, be it environmental or health policy. So this is public money. But how to measure it, it's difficult. So it's a tricky question. Anyone of our knowledge valorization stars who would like to comment? Dietrich, I see you speaking. Yes, please open the mic.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether it's really about measuring, but rather than evaluating. I think in order to make a judgment on the importance of certain developments, in the first place, we need to take more perspectives at the same time to combine different views from different paths of society. COVID is a good example. It's not only a medical, biological question, but it's also an economic, it's a societal, a psychological phenomenon. So I think in order to do that, we need to bring together different communities. And in order to do that, again, is one point which has also been very strong in the presentations from Justina as well as Davide. We need to improve work on data so that we will be able to combine heterogeneous data from different sources. So to get more, to know more about phenomena which we didn't research upon traditionally, which are new, but which require urgent action. So that would be, for me, the way forward.
Thank you, Dietrich. There is also one question, perhaps, which is particularly relevant for you about the role of large research infrastructures in knowledge valorization.
Yes, I think I can cite the work which has been done inside S3. Large research infrastructures are in many respects very important because they are a focal point for many scientific communities. So they are best placed to foster good practice. Virtually all large infrastructures today are collecting data. They're very important. Their fund of data they are having. So the way they are curating the data, the way they are sharing the data is very important for the production of wealth and in other areas. In the first place, in the research field, but not taking not too long. It's also important for economic activities, or if you only turn again to COVID, it's very practical value for society in coping with medical questions.
Okay, clear. David, there's a question I think best addressed to you. How would co-creation and valorization work in educational science, where schools have neither time nor resources to engage widely with educational researchers?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. What we are trying to do, and we're not the only one, is to really put knowledge transfer in a broad sense, also within the education policies that we have. And that is a two-way thing. On the one hand, we try to teach knowledge transfer within the courses to our students, so that becomes an integral part of our education programs. Mm-hmm. But also the other way around, of course, we try to innovate in our teaching activities, and of course, COVID gave a big burst in that, which has been well received. This doesn't hide the problem, the fundamental problem that academic people nowadays are stretched over too many things to do, I don't have an answer on how to solve the problem at the European level, but I think the only way that we can try to tackle the problem is, first of all, to redistribute the tasks in a more efficient way, and maybe reduce the bureaucratic burden and certain activities that are not that necessary anymore. But it's important at this point, I mean, if you really want to push again behavior follows structure, that we recognize that valorization is not something, a hobby that we have, but it's part of our duty, one of the three legs of what universities should do.
Okay, thanks a lot. So we can take perhaps one or two more questions, because then I would like to give the floor, like in a television talk show, to our 3 stars for knowledge valorization to wrap up in 1 minute your key message. There is a question. That's more a comment that the underlying budgets are not necessarily just research budgets. I think that's I take that point. Then most universities are already engaged in co-creation, business cooperation, and have knowledge transfer facilities. We need more connectivity and sharing of expertise. Yes, beyond the mere and I think that was a very clear message coming also from all 3 of you. Openness, sharing, connections, flexibility. I fully endorse this comment. It's a question how we get there, what structure to change the behavior and open it up. So which changes do you expect for Horizon Europe implementation in the area of open science and valorization obligations and incentives? So we have we are preparing in the model grant agreements, new exploitation obligations, learning from current experience. One example is a result ownership list, so that it is clear for all project participants who has created what, because that will help later on to exploit and valorize. We also test now with COVID-19 that we go one step further with open science, open data, make results and data accessible without any delay and public without delay, and also exclude exclusive licensing. So there is some impact here, and we have some new tools to play with in Horizon Europe. There was a question also to us here, what will be the next steps? So, and this will be my conclusion already. Today, for this session. Today is a starting point. And a very, very rich contribution from you, for which I'm very grateful. We will work throughout next year. So we will get, I trust, next week, the political endorsement from the College of Commissioners to work on guiding principles for knowledge valorization. So because we cannot do that alone as an institution, so we need the political endorsement. I hope we will also have a very good support from member states, and then engage with member states and engage throughout next year with stakeholders to come up to co-create this new framework, the new guiding principles for all actors, whether universities, RTOs, companies, SMEs, startups, etc. So that is the timeline. So in a good year from now, we should be finalizing this framework. And with this, I propose we do it in the opposite order. We start with you, Dietrich, as a television-like closing sentence, followed by Davide and Justina. Dietrich.
Yeah, perhaps two sentences. First is I agree to everything what you just said, and I'm looking forward that the new recommendation will also give a great boost to what we just have discussed. And one second remark, I think most important of all subjects we have discussed is culture, a spirit of co-creation and cooperation. And I had mentioned on one of my slides the horizontal cooperation between different ministries, but at least just as important is also cooperation on a vertical level, which of course also includes local and regional activities. But I think we only have a chance to succeed with everything we are thinking about if we manage to keep up a good European cooperation if we move forward jointly.
Thank you very much, Dietrich. Davide.
Well, I'd like first of all to thank everyone for the questions and for the attention, of course, and for the criticism, which are always very welcome. In my opinion, and again, I take the position of a researcher, without researchers, there is no knowledge. And without no knowledge, there is no knowledge transfer. So we need to keep in mind this. And if we want to have more knowledge transfer, we need to provide the tools that the researchers need to have skin in the game, to be involved in this process, because without their involvement, we're not going to go everywhere. Even if this means that it's going to become, again, as I mentioned, a cost chapter. Of course, you need the entire ecosystem. You need the technology transfer officers. You need the companies who come on board. If you think about economic valorization, you can think to involve other stakeholders, like in the case of the toxic substance or whatever. Well, maybe the companies are not interested, but the consumers may be interested. Or if you make a public debate kind of event, it's also knowledge transfer, and then the public becomes the stakeholder. And we have to create this sort of agreement between all the parties that participate to knowledge transfer. But it has to start with the skin in the game with the researchers.
Thank you very much, Davide. Justina.
Yes, and on top of that, what gentleman has said, especially Davide, about the players and the beneficiaries of valorization of knowledge transfer, I would like to add just one comment that COVID has taught us a lot on working remotely and cooperating remotely. So that will be even more complex in near future, that knowledge will be created in various parts of world. And on top of that, there will be Industry 4.0 approaching. So there is a lot of work for us to do, to work on or to think about the ownership of future works created by humans, machines, data management, and all of these will have to be considered.
Thank you all. Thank you also there, wherever you are, for your participation. Please, this is a starting point. Stay with us, help us to co-create this. You can comment also and question us or contribute via our functional mailbox, which you find here on the chat. So thanks a lot again. All the very best, and let's do this together. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.